What's up, guys? Tom Grossi got his start reacting to a Packers loss. Lost and Unbound got his start cutting up his jersey. I will not be doing that. But, might as well come in here and talk about the San Antonio Spurs. And this series, it's been a fun one. If you're just a basketball fan, if you're not a fan of either of these teams and you're just watching for the pure love of the game, it is a great watch. It's competitive, physical basketball through and through. And I think for the most part, what we really are seeing is one team that has been there, that has won the championship, that is trying to defend the championship, and one team that, maybe has a championship in their future, but just honestly doesn't look that ready for it yet. A little bit more into this, so I'm gonna just pull up my trusty phone right here and take a look at the stats. Obviously, Shea, the MVP of the league. Not the greatest night from him, honestly. Definitely gets to the line, but that's Shea. Shea's always going to be at the line. But really, again, very impactful Alex Caruso minutes off the bench. Jared McCain. I have a lot to say about that, but the other Jalen Williams, as they said on the podcast, the Jalen Williams, puts in a nice 18 points here. Carson Wallace also had a couple big threes down in that game. But yeah, overall, these are two teams that have been told that they are pretty deep. But you see it from the Thunder because you go 10 deep, and there are, I guess AJ Mitchell got injured early in this game, but there are 9 players that played over 20 minutes in this game versus if you look at the Spurs, it's just the starters. You get Harper, who's played 17, which is the only one who really comes close here. But yeah, you just get an overall bench effort here, and I think they said this at the end of the game, but the Thunder had almost 80 bench points, and you usually will not see a game where your starters have a combined, let me just do this math real quick, 47 points? 47 points out of the 123. That is basically 33% of the points came from the starting lineup, and they won the game. So you don't see that, ever. And there's a reason for that. Most teams, especially in the playoffs, cannot go 10 men deep. And this OKC team really just might be unstoppable. To be quite frank, I don't know what else to say here. I do. Let's talk about the Spurs real quick. Obviously, Spurs jersey, Spurs fan. So I'm gonna just go player by player here. Devin Vassell, honestly, I think is the only player who came in this game and really gave it his all. He shot 12 shots, 50%. 6 of them were threes, 50% as well there. 5 for 5 on his free throws, made all of those. He had 4 fouls, but each of those fouls were tough fouls guarding SGA. He had, I think, no, he didn't have a block, but he had 4 steals this game. And what I've been seeing from a lot of Devin Vassell, and I think this comes with the fact that he is one of the older players on this team. He's pushing 26, 25 years old, and at this point of time, he's the one that, even though he hasn't been to the playoffs, he spent time on this organization, and he's gotten the opportunity to grow and really experience competitive basketball. And I'm not saying that Victor Wembanyama in his 3 years in the league hasn't done that. Obviously, he comes and shows up at a high level. But what we're seeing is that, obviously, when you take Wemby off the court, when you take the unanimous defensive player of the year off the court, it's not going to be pretty. And once we had a 15, we being the Spurs, by the way, in this case, the Spurs have a 15-0 run, and Wemby comes out, and all of a sudden the game is tied going into the first quarter. The first quarter ended with a 5-point lead by San Antonio after they started 15-0. And part of that is Mitch Johnson's rotations. Mitch Johnson's rotations have also been the most questionable thing about his coaching. His rotations have been looked at as a little bit sketchy, but what you really see is throughout the stretch of this, Wemby is gassed. Now, there's a lot of talk about like how many minutes Wemby plays. For instance, there's a few stats being thrown around when it came to the awards this year about how Wemby played less minutes than like Cade and Luka, who obviously became eligible for awards, but originally were probably not going to be because they played 64, 63 games each. And because of that, you take a look at the fact that Luka, even though he's played less games than Wemby, played significantly more minutes. I think it was over 200 more. And in the regular season, that was fine, and I was okay with that because obviously the goal and what San Antonio Spurs have been doing for years, we invented load management. It came with Tim Duncan, obviously with Kawhi Leonard. These are load management came from this organization. I would expect us to use it on potentially the next greatest of all time player, but what I've seen now is that Wemby just doesn't have the endurance. In the past 2 games, the entire time he has looked pretty much just gassed. And it wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't for the fact that this team can't really play without him on the floor. When Luke Cornett is out there, and I'm not saying that Luke Cornett is a bad defender, he's no Wembanyama. And he definitely played better in the regular season, and maybe against the Trailblazers he had a little bit of a game, but against Hartenstein, against Chet, Luke Cornett really doesn't stand a chance. And I think that it's important to note that the Spurs try to run the same kind of defense when Luke Cornett is on the court and when Wembanyama is on the court. And that doesn't work. The double teams, cheating every assignment because you know that Wemby is in the paint, that doesn't work with Luke Cornett. He might be 7 feet, but both the bigs in OKC's realm are also 7 feet. I mean, you got Chet, who's 7'1", and Hartenstein, I think, is also somewhere around there. So you really aren't getting that same kind of defensive pressure. They're attacking the rim. This is a team that's great at doing that. And if they don't need to attack the rim, Shea can take a mid-ranger. He is, again, the MVP of the league. And at a certain point, I do believe, I mean, I'm a statistics major, I believe in the regression. But I don't know if I can justify leaving Alex Caruso open anymore. 3 of 5 this game, and he was shooting 80% on the series before this. It's not something that is working anymore. And yes, we're kind of doing the double Shea, force him to pass the ball and let everyone else beat us. But they can. And they've shown it in now back-to-back. I guess like Shea did drop 30 the game 2. But game 2 was its own thing. This is a game 3 recap. I'm not going to get into that. Game 2 was its own thing. But in game 3, 6 for 17 from the field from a guy who shoots 55% from the field, and his main thing being efficient, good shots. Holding him at 35% shooting is great defense. And even though that turned into 26 points, yes, a lot of that's on free throws, and we do need to clean up the fouling. I think, you can say what you want about Shea, but if you really look in those fouls, like, yes, they're drawn. Maybe you don't like it, but it's basketball, it's the rules, and you gotta live with that. Something else I did want to say too is the turnovers. This is a game where you see 1 turnover from Castle after, I think it was 20 in 2 games, and obviously we all talked about the fact that the Spurs were doing that, or the Spurs had this issue because De'Aaron Fox was not playing. Their main league all-star guard was not in the rotation because he was missing the first 2 games with ankle soreness. And the Spurs were averaging 22 turnovers a night. Tonight we had 15 turnovers as a team, and while that is not 22, while that is definitely an improvement, it goes to show that I don't know if you can really say that the turnovers are a Stephon Castle problem or if they are a San Antonio Spurs basketball problem. And why I say that is obviously 20 turnovers in 2 games is literally a record. It's never been done before in the playoffs. But at the same time, it's a sophomore year point guard who's not even a real point guard. Realistically, I mean, 6'6", yeah, he can create his shot, but playing the full court, dribbling up, like, that is not his role. De'Aaron Fox is the main guy who does that. And, De'Aaron Fox had some boneheaded turnovers in this game. When we were making a run, he started doing it. And he had a great game. Don't get me wrong. De'Aaron Fox was definitely the player tonight as far as effort behind Devin Vassell, in my opinion. But you really just didn't see him take care of the ball. And what happens is this becomes a group turnover game. Obviously, I would say that it's actually even less because I'm seeing now that Kelly Olynyk had 2 of those in garbage time. So 13 turnovers. Again, that would be fine if we didn't only have 10 from the Thunder. And they are the best defense in the league. This is going to happen. But it's a struggle out here to keep the ball steady. Whenever we go on these runs, whenever we start making it closer, all of a sudden OKC is able to pull away because we make a boneheaded turnover or we foul them on the ball. And this comes down to that young basketball. I know that Mitch Johnson, I know that Wembanyama, I know that Castle all like to say that, hey, it hasn't showed up for us yet. It showed up multiple times in the past series. I'm not going to lie. Like, in the Portland series, obviously Wemby does go down, but if we don't turn the ball over so much in that game, we sweep the Trailblazers. Against the Timberwolves, one thing was the Wemby getting ejected, and that's obviously just too much emotion. And, I obviously never could tell you what it feels like to get hacked like that by some guy who's 50 pounds heavier than you, regardless of his, height. But there were a lot of boneheaded turnovers, too. Game 1, I mean, the way that the Spurs lost, it wasn't clean basketball. There were signs of a young team. And the difference is that OKC is not going to let you win a game if you make those kind of mistakes. The other teams was a hurt Anthony Edwards and, frankly, a Trailblazers team that was just happy to be in the playoffs. But a hurt Anthony Edwards and that team were not going to take advantage of the Spurs' mistakes. But this team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the reigning champions, are going to take advantage of it. And there just needs to be better protection of the ball and better protection of the runs, really understanding the momentum of the game. Obviously, Mitch Johnson says it all the time, but Castle starts the game with basically four fouls, and he plays hard. These are hard fought fouls, a lot of them. The bump where Alex Caruso runs straight into him. I'm not going to say too much, but I don't really think that's a foul. But again, that's who Alex Caruso is. He gets his fouls called for him. He gains extra possessions for them. And the Spurs just really need to game plan that. We can't sit there and, it might be unfair. It might not be unfair. It's technically the rules. You got to play around everything. And we saw a little bit of that pregame with that viral clip of, Wemby asking his trainers to hold on to his arms, but you really didn't see any of that. Hartenstein had 5 fouls. He wasn't really in the game like that. It wasn't physical. It wasn't, lopsided officiating. It was just bad basketball. let's get to Jared McCain. First of all, sell high. Sell high is never Jared McCain. And what I mean by that is sell high isn't the guy that you drafted the previous year in the first round and are now trading away for a first rounder from OKC, which is not a real first round. It's the back of the first round, and 3 second-round picks. I put out a tweet and I was like, how did they get him for basically 4 second-round picks? Because that is what they did. They got 4 second-round picks in return for Jared McCain, who they selected in the first round, and as I don't know if he was a lottery pick, but basically around the lottery areas and somewhere in the teens. And he just dropped 24 points in 26 minutes in a playoff game where he shot 20% from the three-point line. So that Jared McCain's probably one of his top abilities. Obviously, he can finish at the rim great. We saw it all through this game. But what you're scared of when you see Jared McCain enter the court is his spacing and his three-point creation. Because that dude literally was shooting like 80-70% against the Lakers. And that's the kind of like game plan that the Spurs come in with. And they stopped the three, but I mean, this dude just drove into the Defensive Player of the Year, said, get the fuck out of my way, and just laid it in like it was nothing. And I mean, I've talked about this with some of my friends, but Jared McCain is really, in my opinion, the X factor in this series, and it showed today. And with AJ Mitchell going down in this game, and I think he's been going down regularly in this series, and he has a history of like leg injuries. I'm not saying that even Jared McCain is better than AJ Mitchell. I mean, shout out UCSB. I love AJ Mitchell, but in this series, at the least against these levels of defenders, AJ Mitchell has not performed the same level that Jared McCain has, with the same intensity and with the same confidence. And I mean, it's always the next man up mentality, but I think Jared McCain has it a lot, and I really don't know how much they're going to miss AJ Mitchell with him going down. To start off the playoffs going 8 for 8 and playing your toughest opponent in the conference finals and having your best game, I really don't know what to expect now. And that's not saying that the Spurs can't come out and even maybe win the series, take a few more games, but I think King of the Fourth Quarter Kenny Beecham said it best. If the Thunder beat the Spurs in 5, oh man, the rest of the league is screwed. And at this point, the way that the Spurs are playing, I mean, I know they don't look like the 60-win team, but they definitely have a chance. If the Spurs lose at home again, I don't see them coming back and really putting in that effort on Game 5. Again, Wemby doesn't look great. Castle has his moments, but it comes with boneheaded plays. He's young. I think he needs a little bit more control in general. Real side note on that. When Castle got pushed mid-air twice, the announcers were like, yeah, Castle needs to control himself. And I get what Wemby did was bad, and Mitch Johnson talked about it like, hey, we're really glad that Naz Reid is okay, but you got to defend yourself. And Castle is doing it with like Castle isn't coming out here like he's squaring up, yes, but he hasn't thrown a punch. He hasn't done any of that kind of stuff, and it's just that Castle has gotten this perspective from the league and maybe the officials that yeah, that's a guy who's gonna foul. The official, I don't know how officiating works, but maybe they go in with a game plan. Yeah, they know like, hey, watch number 5 in black. Like that's not like the kind of player that we're gonna let anything go on, which shows up. I mean, he might in this playoff run average 4.5 fouls maybe a game, and it's it's quite frustrating to see because Castle I think is one of the best defenders in the league, and if it isn't for his fouling, I think he's a second team all defense player for sure. I think that's something that sorry that was a tangent, but getting back to it, um, we got game 4 on Sunday at 5 p.m. PST. It's back in Frostbank Center. At the end of the day, this team really needs to like take a deep look in the mirror. And again, going back to the turnover thing, we need to stop turning the ball over. We need to see if De'Aaron Fox is really healthy. I was very surprised when I saw the injury report this game and saw that he was going to be playing. I don't know. I think him and Dylan Harper may not have been ready for this game. I mean, you see one of the worst games out of Dylan Harper. And what I would like is, it sucks to go down 3-1 in a series. But at the end of the day, the health of the players does matter more. And if I don't think I want to see De'Aaron Fox on the floor next game, given all these ankle issues that he's been having. I don't want him to go out there and just have to tweak it and then for us to have to make on-the-fly adjustments. And, I mean, Dylan Harper, maybe it was just the game back and maybe he was struggling a little bit, like, beyond the leg, but he just didn't look the same explosive, getting to the rim kind of player. He was looking at 2 dribbles and 2 feet into the paint, and after that, pass it out to the guy on the 3-point line. But yeah, game 4 Sunday. Honestly, if I were to price in the game, I would say OKC minus 3.5 here. I think this could be a closer game. Again, Spurs are at home. That definitely does change it. And again, Spurs are going to try to make sure that they don't lose 3 in a row. Because they talk their shit after game 1. It will be tough to lose 3 in a row. But yeah, until next time, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this kind of recap thing or even just talking about the Spurs. But, it is great to see this team in the conference finals in itself. So, you might see me back. But yeah, thank you for watching. Peace.